on by phone.
Thanks, Dan.
The report, it says requested.
All right, welcome. Get going here. Welcome to the Southern New Hampshire Metropolitan Planning Organization meeting and Southern New Hampshire Planning Commission meeting. It's 22nd. I'd like to call to order the meeting and look for action on the minutes from March 18th, 2025. So we can make a motion
To approve as presented.
Second. Have that, Linda?
Yeah.
All right, roll call, please.
Okay, from Auburn, we have Mr. Dill.
Here or not?
Online, Auburn, so Richard, Bill Jean.
Here and abstain.
John Nelson,
Here and abstain.
Mark Schneider.
Here, abstain.
No. Okay, from here, Ron Lavender,
Here, yeah.
Chester, Deb Munson, here, yes. Oh, could the caller, joining us by phone ending in 090, could you identify yourself, please?
4090, Linda. It's Dan O'Neill from Manchester.
Thank you very much. Okay, Deerfield, Brad Madurex.
Here and yes.
Errol Rhodes.
Here and yes.
From Derry, we have John O'Connor.
Here and yes.
Let's see, Richard Trenton.
Here and yes.
Okay. Let's see, Francis Town. Linda Coonhart.
Here and yes.
And Gary Schneckenberg.
Here and yes.
Oh, and Chester, looks like Andrew Paddock just joined. Andrew, would you like to weigh in on the minutes?
Apparently not.
And Andrew Haddock, and yes on the minutes.
Great, thank you very much. Let's see, Foxtown, I think I saw Julian Duffy.
Here.
And she could still
Oh.
use this to bring her horses down or whatnot.
Let's see, pick up LaFontaine, are you with us?
Yeah. But I mean, it must be a trail still.
Yeah. Okay, we'll move on to Londonderry then. Looks like we have Brian Battaglia.
No, you can mark me present in here.
Oh, I'm sorry. You're at the top and I'm sorry about that.
See, Sylvia, no one gets it right.
Okay, so Londonderry, Brian Battaglia.
Here and yes.
Great. Suzanne Brunel.
Yep, here and abstain. It's a little hard to hear you. You're a little quiet.
I'll try speaking up.
Thank you.
Art Rugg here in the office.
Here it is.
Patrick Cheatham.
Good morning, everyone. Here and abstain.
Anybody else from Londonderry? Okay, moving on to Manchester, Peter Capano.
Here and yes.
Let's see, Dan O'Neill,
Here and yes.
great, and Kevin Shepherd,
Here and yes.
excellent. From New Boston, Ellen Campbell. Here and yes. We have anyone from where? No, it doesn't look like it. Okay, so from Wyndham, we have Peter Griffin
Here and yes.
and Ed LaPointe.
Here and yes.
Okay. Great. It looks like we have some guests from DES and HDS, Jessica Wilcox. No, I'm sorry, I see Jennifer. Jennifer must be Jennifer
Bad
Vadney.
name.
Good morning. Yep, if you're still counting me, Jennifer Vadney from Francistown, abstain for the minutes. Thanks.
Great, thank you. Anybody else I missed? Oh, DOT folks. I mean, oh, I'm saying. Oh, you're good. Yeah, right. Okay, abstain and. Oh. Okay. Okay, thank you. Very good.
All right,
Okay,
Good.
great.
all right.
Yeah.
On to new business. TAP project prioritization. Yeah, packet. Got a notification in your packet. We're looking to adopt that. Dave Shilson's up to present that. You're on.
All right, thank you. We get to. All right, can everyone see that at full screen mode at home?
Yes.
Yes.
All right, thank you. Good morning, everyone. My name is David Tilton. Today I'm going to be presenting on the Transportation Alternatives Program, or TAP, funding for round 4. So I just wanted to go over some of our past meetings where we've been discussing TAP funding. On February 20th, we had a TAC, SHPC presented to the TAC an overview of the TAP process. This included the criteria that we'd be using for scoring, a brief overview of each of the 3 projects, the TAP process itself. And at that meeting, we asked volunteers to form the TAP evaluation subcommittee. At the MPO meeting in the same month, we did a similar presentation to the MPO. This one was slightly different. We had the introduction of the volunteers for the subcommittee. In March, at that TAC meeting, the project sponsors presented to the full TAC their projects. This included detailed project descriptions and a question and answer period for each project. Right after that meeting, the TAP evaluation subcommittee met to discuss, rank, and score the projects. Last week at the TAC meeting, the subcommittee presented those recommendations to the TAC. The TAC voted to recommend project priority rankings to the MPO for their consideration. Which brings us to where we are today. So in today's meeting, we're going to review the project rankings put forth by the TAC. As always, the MPO has the ability to accept or modify the rankings as they see fit. We're asking for, at the end of the presentation today, for a vote to approve final project rankings that we will be submitting to DOT before the 25th, which is the deadline for RPCs to submit. So here we have the 5 categories that we use to rank the projects for scoring. Each category had a total 20 points attributed to it for 100 points potential. So for this, I'd like to go briefly through the TAP evaluation subcommittee process. As we mentioned earlier, the subcommittee was formed at the February TAC meeting, and we asked for volunteers to be from communities that did not have any applications in this round of TAP funding. The three people that volunteered for this was Rebecca Hebert from Bedford, Elizabeth Robideau from Derry, and Sylvia Von Allag from SNHPC. It was very instrumental for their, we thank them for their time and expertise in putting this process through. Prior to the evaluation subcommittee meeting, the applications and supporting materials were sent to the subcommittee for review. As I just said earlier, we met right after the TAC meeting where the projects were presented. This meeting took a couple hours. We came in here after this room cleared out and brought all the projects and the applications up on the screen, went through each one, discussed the positives and challenges of each project, discussed scorings and rankings. Comments and scores were noted during that meeting and then sent around to each of the subcommittee participants for review to make sure that we had accurate representation. So in the next couple slides, I'm going to do a brief review of each project and then summarize some of the positives and challenges that the subcommittee noted. Starting with Goffstown, they're looking to install a 126-foot long pedestrian bridge over the Piscataquag River, bridging the Goffstown Rail Trail to the east, to Goffstown Rail Trail to the Main Street Village area. So some of the positives attributed to this project were, it is a continuation of the Goffstown Rail Trail. It's the next phase of a multi-phase project. Connections were recognized regionally and locally. This project has the potential to provide connections between New Boston, Goffstown, and Manchester. It also provides safer connections locally with residential development, like on the residential development on Factory Street, as well as local schools in the proximity to the Goffstown Village area that has a number of commercial and municipal functions and businesses. This application included 8 letters of support from various community boards, committees, and organizations, including the Board of Selectmen and the school district. And it was noted that Goffstown has a history of volunteerism and funding on past GRT projects. Some of the challenges noted was during the presentation, it was noted that Goffstown hasn't had a clear strategy for ensuring the 20% match. And this project does not provide a direct connection to non-motorized, doesn't provide a non-motorized connection to other forms of transportation such as bus for non-driving populations. For the Manchester project broadly is looking to increase connections and make safer connections between the Livingston Park and the surrounding neighborhoods. A week ago, we got an update from Manchester, which included this graphic specifying how they were going to come, how they were going to make some of those connections. So we have intersection improvements in the green circles to the north and south of Livingston Park, evaluating sidewalk curb cuts on Hooksett as well as a mid-block crossing, and curb cuts and safety treatments along connections on Union Street. So for this project, it was noted that this project will allow for improved connections between Livingston Park and the surrounding neighborhoods. And the size of this project encompassing to almost all of Livingston Park, the neighborhoods, the densely packed neighborhoods around it, plus the increased connections to the MTA bus routes, this would provide a positive impact for a large non-driving population. This application also included a Board of Mayors and Aldermen's letter of support for the funding match. And this project is located within the high injury network. So when we did meet in March, when we had the original scopes, it was viewed that this project was very broad and conceptual. It was not clear on how some of these connections would be made. The connections were recognized, but the lack of specificity caused some uncertainty on how gaps would be filled. For Wyndham is looking to install a 10-foot wide paved path between Old Mill Road in the south to North Lowell Road up in the northeast. And it will also look to go under I-93 allowing a bridge over a barrier, and giving access to a greater, trail network. So it was recognized that this project would fill in gaps and create accessibility within Wyndham, within the existing trail network of Wyndham. It would also provide regional accessibility and connections by allowing trail users to go under I-93, which is a barrier for non-motorized use. This would provide a safe alternative form of transportation through the town of Wyndham. And this project has been cited in the Wyndham CIP and has funds reserved for it. Some of the challenges associated with this project was there's no schools that are directly connected to this project. It also does not provide a direct non-motorized transportation to other modes of transportation for non-driving populations. And details were uncertain for how this would connect to other rail trail networks in the region. Here we have a summary slide showing the scores and the rankings that the TAC recommended last week's meeting. We have Goffstown ranked at number 1 with 86 total points, Manchester number 2 with 84 total points, and Wyndham number 3 with 69 total points. So today we're looking for a vote on a final project rankings that we can submit to DOT. And I can open up the floor for questions and discussions.
Any questions for David? Barbara?
Thank you.
Yep.
Could you go to the prior slide, David?
Sure.
Thank
Oop, what did I do? 1 second, please. Sorry about that.
Define for me what a vulnerable road user is.
Yeah, vulnerable road users is NHDOT did a vulnerable road user safety assessment where they looked at corridors that had high crashes for pedestrian and bicyclists.
Okay, so it's pedestrian, bicycle.
Yeah, not motorized.
And or bicyclist crash. Okay, and could you just remind me, what's the match on this?
It's 20%.
20, that's what I
Yep.
got. Thank you.
On the map for the Wyndham project, like that.
Mm-hmm.
So that connects up to the existing rail trail
Mm-hmm.
coming out of Derry. And how long would the Wyndham project be?
This green line represents.
Almost 2.5 miles?
Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Is it safe to assume that there's already a tunnel going under 93 for rail trail?
I believe the tunnel will be part of the project. I don't know if there's an existing tunnel at this location currently.
There is, you may recall last month, Wyndham simultaneously applied for both 10-year plan and TAP consideration. We did actually program this project in our list of 10-year plan priorities. So it does have a path forward in the 10-year plan. Now, if it was to be funded through TAP, that might free up that funding that we had programmed in the 10-year plan for us to deploy elsewhere. But we do have this project in our 10-year plan priorities, and we do anticipate that this exact project will be in the draft 10-year plan that is coming out. So Wyndham did apply simultaneously for both, and the I-93 underpasses is there already. Yeah.
Any other questions for David?
See if we have anybody
Online?
online.
You don't have any questions for David?
Here, stop sharing. There it is.
Hearing none. We're looking for a motion to approve TAP project prioritization.
I'll make that motion.
Two motions.
I'll do a second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Thank you very much.
All right, next up, Safe Streets for All, SS4A Action Plan, presentation by Adam. This is an informational only, except Adam's not gonna be presenting.
Adam is not going to be presenting, nor am I.
Oh,
So-
look at that.
So just by quick introduction, the Safe Streets and Roads for All program, what we call SS4A, is a federal program that was established in the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. So it is a new federal program a couple of years ago now, but still exists in the IIJA. And it does exactly what you would think it is. It is a safety-oriented federal program targeted towards all roadway users. So not just, vehicular travel, but motorcyclists, bicycles, pedestrians, all roadway users. And there's a threshold to apply for implementation funding, to apply for a project under the federal law. And that is that in order for a municipality to apply for a project under the SS4A program, it must be covered by an SS4A action plan. So it's kind of a threshold. You have to be in an action plan covered area. So when the IIJA was passed and became law, the 4 MPOs, Southern New Hampshire Planning Commission, Nashua Regional Planning Commission, Rockingham Planning Commission, and Stratford Planning Commission, they all got together and we pooled funding. We couldn't each individually afford to do our own SS4A action plan as our own grants. We pooled funding and we hired VHB to help us in developing the SS4A action plans for each of our respective regions. So today, Frank Kachalka from VHB is here and will provide an overview of the SS4A safety action plan that has been developed, which we now have in a draft form for our region. So I'm going to take Frank's maybe. Let's see. I don't want to unplug something here. Oh. Yeah. I may have to go to Plan B to get this.
That's just unplugging the mouse.
Unplugging. Oh yeah, I will unplug the mouse momentarily. All right. That's a good idea. Bear with me just a second as I have this on a USB.
It's a good segment.
Yeah, good segment.
Yeah, maybe this is an opportunity for everybody to take 5 minutes and go get their lunch while we load this presentation up.
Yeah.
Yep.
You probably want to mute us too.
Okay, I will mute.
See you there on Sunday.
Get going.
Folks, can everyone see this presentation in full screen mode?
Yes.
All right, very good. I'm going to go ahead and yield the floor to Frank. If you need to advance, you can just do it with these arrows.
Okay. Great. All right. Thank you for having me. Some of you may remember, we were out here and I think the end of last year, we were asking for some input from some projects and for our project outreach for the plan. So I appreciate being invited back. I'm just gonna keep my phone here, not that I want to see people, but make sure I stay on time to give you plenty of time. Nate stole a little of my thunder on the first slide, but that's okay. Talking about the safe streets for all. It is what it says, safe streets for all. So we're talking, from right of way to right of way, that's what it's focused on. So your motor vehicles, your walkers, your bicyclists, everything from sidewalk to sidewalk, if you have it. It doesn't get into really the trails, that's been coming up, but in your tap, but it's a 5 billion over 5 years. So every year it's about $1 billion that the program's going. This is the 4th year. It supports your regional, local, and tribal initiatives. So where this is an MPO, others have gone in, towns, communities have gone in independently. And it based off the safe system approach that's been through federal highway, and really in a nutshell, we used to in the old days say we're just gonna eliminate crashes, and realizing that's really not inevitable is going to happen. So what we're saying is humans make mistakes. There are going to be crashes, but this system or this approach will make the people safer, the crashes safer, speed. So by introducing, say, roundabouts at signals, the speeds are slower. So you don't have, really, you're preventing those serious and fatal crashes. That's really where this is. You're gonna have property crashes, you're gonna have minor, but really we want to cut down on the death and serious injuries. For the safety action plan that we developed, as Nate was saying, we kind of had it broken down into these 8 groups in the plan. And I'm just gonna go through quickly and kind of talk about each of them, of how the plan was developed. So for the leadership and commitment and goal setting, we have all the MPOs that were together. That was our steering committee along with Department of Safety, New Hampshire DOT. But we also had the TAC members that provided input. And then the goal setting, this is what we currently have in the plan. It matches very, with the strategic highway safety plan in New Hampshire. And I know you've given me comments on it. I don't recall if that's changed or not. To be honest, I didn't get a chance to check it, but basically reducing fatal and serious injuries as a goal. And this one was 50% by 2035 and 0 towards 2050. And kind of really working it with the mission of the 4 E's they're called, you know, your engineering, education, enforcement, and emergency response. There used to be a 5th E. I guess a dirty E now with federal was equity. We'll get into that after, because that plays a pull. When you look at the plan, you're gonna have a question on that, I know going forward, but equity. So we struggle this because we're finishing it up. All the executive orders are coming in. What Federal Highway has told us recently is our action plan should meet the grant agreement in time and place that it was developed. So prior to this new administration. So we have kept equity in here. We're going to work with Southern New Hampshire. We may tweak a little bit of the language, but we feel that we need to meet that quality and that agreement in the language. So if you look at it or somebody asked the question, that's why it's still in. And I'll get to it at the end, this next round, this implementation round. Equity has changed. There's no longer the word equity. They've done a substitute, and we can kind of get into that after. So, what did I do? Let's see. Yeah, I won't get into safety action approach because that kind of walks through everything we're doing here. Outreach efforts. So the maps on the screen we did a survey. We had over 1,000 people respond from the 4 MPOs. This is Southern New Hampshire's responses. So we asked people to place pins within your MPO region, provide comments. And then we put it, so in the top left is motor vehicle improvements, pedestrian improvements in the top right, with bicycle or bicyclist improvements in the bottom left. And then we had other, in case it didn't qualify under those 3, if they had some other issues or concerns, we were able to provide that. So we have a database that we were able to pull from of all the comments, all the pins. They were asked to do up to 3 if they wanted to, but we also had some other questions of how safe they felt on the road. Why don't they drive? Is it financial? Is it other reasons? So we have a strong outreach just from that survey. But at the same time, we also went to the 4 MPOs and asked the TAC for input. So we have that input that we've incorporated. We also reached out for 2 focus groups, bicyclist and motorcycle. Those are 2 key members. As we were developing this, unfortunately, during the summer, there's a high level of motorcycle crashes. So we really wanted to get their input. And we also, for this one, we worked with James. We met in Manchester with
Conservation Law Foundation.
Thank you. To get a little bit more there, and that kind of worked for everyone. You know, the disadvantaged, the downtown. Another group that we just want to get more input on. Sometimes we don't hear from them, and this plan is really comprehensive. It's not just a few people. We want to hear from everyone. So we did a strong outreach. We were able to garner all that information and use that as we kind of work through the final stages, the strategy tables, the safety countermeasures. I'll get into those after. Another thing we did was a lot of people had existing plans that incorporated safety or complete streets. So we kind of looked at it from a state level. So we had the Strategic Highway Safety Plan. DOS has their safety plan as well, Department of Safety. But we also looked at the local ones. So, you know, Southern New Hampshire, if the town and municipality had something online that we were able to look through. And we kind of looked through them and see in the plans what kind of worked alongside this action plan and calling out there was some connectivity there. So we didn't just look at it from a blind eye. The best thing would be if they all lined up together. But as you can tell, you got 2018, 2021, 2022. Everyone kind of comes together, but the goal is to try to see how we can pull this information as one. So that's kind of in the plan. A major piece of this was the data analysis we did. So we worked with Southern New Hampshire Planning Commission, DOT, DOS. We got the crash data and I think Manchester to understand their crashes and really kind of see general trends. So we took crashes over let's see, a 5-year period. We excluded interstates. And the reason we did that is the DOT really controls the interstates. And if you're looking for safety for all, you don't have pedestrians and bicyclists up there. And that would be a major focus. I think the interstates have a high percentage of crashes, fatality rates are higher. We said, what can the locals, what can the regional planning commissions, the MPOs control? And we kind of, with the steering committee, took those out and really focused on what the roads that the towns, municipalities just can control. So we looked at general trends and in the report, where the crash is happening, where are they located, what type of crashes, if we could find that. And then what we call emphasis areas, that is a terminology that was in the strategic highway safety plan. So when we say an emphasis area, we look at the crashes, intersections as an emphasis area, speeding, distracted driving, vulnerable users. You know, there's about 10 components that we kind of pick. And what's interesting about emphasis areas, they cross discipline, they cross matrix. So you can have an intersection with a speeding crash. So we wanted to kind of dive into that and see where that happens. Intersections probably have a higher pedestrian rate of crashes than roads away from intersections. So we looked at it from that standpoint to provide that connectivity to the strategic highway safety plan. And then the other thing was systematic analysis. And what we do is we do what they call crash trees. We take crashes that happen at an intersection, and then we determine, is it urban or is it rural? And then break it down even more to kind of see where the breakout goes. So it's a little bit, as opposed to just saying we have pedestrian crashes. Okay, where do we have pedestrians? Are they at intersections, rural roads? Same with speeding. We kind of broke it down to kind of get to a little bit more finite of that analysis. And then we also do equity analysis. So we look at some tracks that Federal Highway used to have that we were able to show on a map, and people that do not have cars. Where are they located? How does that align with where the crashes are happening? So we can kind of see how that works. So there's probably 8 to 10 graphs there. One thing that we did look at along with that is hotspots. So we take all the crashes within the region or within the MPO, and we create a hotspot map. So the more crashes, it becomes red. We did it 2 ways, knowing that Manchester is a significant city, and really kind of, we did one map with everyone included, and then we took one where we took out the crashes from Manchester to kind of give the other aspects or other communities, see how they line up. Because if you look at it with Manchester, I mean, it gets really condensed with the red. So this kind of gives a second way of looking at it. And then the other is a high injury network. A high injury network is, and we identified 5 locations. It's a road that the highest percentage of crashes on the lowest percentage of roads. So if you think, and I'm just going to use an example, nothing against Manchester, just because it popped in my head, but Elm Street. If Elm Street for a certain section has a lot of crashes and a lot of serious injuries and fatalities, that gets bumped up. If you have a similar road of length, they only have 2 or 3 crashes. It's not as, I guess, jumps to the top that there's an issue. You may still have an issue, but you have to kind of prioritize. So that's where the high injury network comes in that we identified. Like I said, the data analysis alone is probably a quarter of the report. It really dives in. The one thing that's interesting is this report, the way it's written, we don't want to be reactive, and that's where data analysis comes in. We're waiting for a crash to happen, then we're going to analyze it. The end with the strategy tables now makes it proactive. Okay, we have a roadway and we know it's on the high injury network. What other locations do we see that are very similar in characteristics that we can prevent? Maybe if we make a change here, we can make a change here before we have crashes. So that's kind of where we're headed with that. And the prioritization of safety countermeasures. So what we did was we took the data analysis, and safety countermeasures are rapid flashing beacons for pedestrian crossing, roundabouts, items that we can call out that will help the safety. We look at it from two different ways: road classifications, and what we talked about before was emphasis areas. The road classifications are, your major roads, your arterials, then we work down to collector and local roads. And as you can imagine, we couldn't dive into every road in the report. There wasn't enough time to do that. So what we did was we highlighted a couple in each category and talked about where we can use countermeasures of a similar road to kind of work through it. So it provides a roadmap to get there. We couldn't go through everything from Manchester to Goffstown to Chester, like all these, it just was going to be too much. And then the emphasis areas is similar. If you have speeding, what countermeasures could you do? What can you put out there to deal with that? So we kind of create a table there to outline. And then the strategy tables, we broke them up by the emphasis areas. So a table, let's say we take speeding, we'll have an action to address speeding. Who could be the lead agency to help? What's the performance matrix? So lead agency might be enforcement, might be a town or a city. Performance matrix, how are we gonna classify if we're making improvements? And we just want to connect it with that safe system approach. So it's kind of what Federal Highway would like to see. So we have a safe system element from that pie chart we showed. And then we also listed potential funding sources. What can we do? Is it a low-term, simple fix that maybe maintenance can do? It's signage, it's pavement markings. Is it a little bit more of a higher priority that we go through? So that those tables in there at the back, we've kind of went through, worked with Southern New Hampshire Planning Commission, and I kind of developed what we think. I think they're still changing a little bit. Things pop up all the time. And the last thing was the implementation resources. It's great. You have a report. It's not to check a box. We like to consider it a living document. We have the strategies. You're going to have a matrix. How are you going to progress over the next 3-5 years? But the most important thing is, where you getting the money? So we add a couple of resources there. Safe Streets for All is there. I think the tab, other grant applications, and I'm sure there's more coming. I mean, every day there was, at one point, grants were coming out every week. So we kind of identified where the resources were to come through, and that kind of pulls the safety action plan together. And then at the end, the appendix, we actually have the questions we asked to the survey. We kind of included those in just to kind of be upfront and honest and clarity to see where we were going. And then the last thing, and Nate kind of addressed it. So you have the action plan. The next round for the SS48 grant program is out, what they call a NOFO. So it's a notice of funding opportunity. So now that you have an action plan, you're under the MPO, you can actually go after additional funding, whether it's implementation or supplemental planning and demonstration. There's opportunities there. Couple things I just want to note is, and the NOFOs, it's a little long, I'll admit, but they do have some assistance with questions to ask. But one thing that they do is, if you're really interested in doing it, Federal Highway will allow you to have one-on-one 30-minute conversations. So whether you're thinking about it, you're getting into the grant, and you have some questions, there is some coaching sessions that they provide. The webinars April 12th, 17th, and supplemental is tomorrow. So it allows opportunity to watch the old ones, the 15th. I believe these were all recorded last time. So I wanted to kind of put that out there, Nate, and I'll give you this just to keep an eye on. And then when I find out if they get posted, I'll let you know when they come up, but just what they go through, what they're looking for. There's certain specific criteria, but it provides you an opportunity. And the other thing is, if you are going to go for it, you go through what they call the valid eval. It's a third-party website that's where you send the grant application in, but you kind of have to register beforehand. So if you're interested, we've always recommended not to wait to do that, just because even if you're thinking of it, you may want to just put in and register if you're debating it, just to get that going. Because I don't know if it goes offline. I don't know what's going to happen. Sooner the better, and just make sure you're covered. So, so that's kind of the overview of the presentation. I can get into more specifics if we think, but I want to kind of give an overhead of how we pulled the plan together. I know it's a lot, trust me. And if you haven't seen the plan, it's probably even more overwhelming, but
by way of process, we've submitted some comments to Frank on the draft. Those will be incorporated. At our May meeting, we will include the plan in your meeting packets, and we will ask for however we end up wording it, either an adoption or an endorsement of the plan at our May meeting, so that we can ensure that any of our municipalities that wishes to apply for implementation funding will be all set to do so, by that June 26th deadline.
Yeah.
So that's the plan. Is you will see the full action plan in your packets for next month's meeting, and we will ask for an endorsement at that meeting.
Is
Any
it
additional
online
questions
right
for
now?
Frank?
Is the safety action plan online right now?
I don't know that we've posted it yet. We got an early draft. We had some comments and markups that we provided to Frank, and I think once those are incorporated, that's when we post the draft. So it'll be soon.
Yeah. Our contract ends the end of the month.
Yeah.
So we got-
Make sure it's by the end.
As much as I
think you can
love
expect
everyone.
our draft to be
Yeah.
posted by the end of April, and we'll include it in your packets for the May meeting.
Yeah.
One question on the analysis side.
Yep.
AI play any role in that?
No. The New Hampshire crash data is still a work in progress. It's good, but it's not great. So you still have to have eyes on it. We worked with you and point out some deficiencies just within this region that if you just pull the data, something was wrong. So luckily we had the MPOs to work with going, this one doesn't look right. We have this. And so AI maybe for some of the outreach, reviewing some of the responses. We kind of looked at it and tried to use it as much as possible, but we still ended up going back and looking at comments and trying to consolidate them. Yes.
This is a sort of a methodological question. You talked earlier about looking at incidents at rural roads versus urban roads. In a place like southern New Hampshire, that can be really sort of tricky, that designation. So my question is like, what criteria did you use to say this is a rural, this is an urban? Since you got a binary there.
Yeah, it's a great question. If we look at what federal highway calls a rural road, Manchester and Nashua are the only ones that are not rural communities.
Okay.
But with that said, if it's a high level of traffic, we used that as a starting point, and then we kind of saw, knowing the communities,
Yeah.
it made sense, but we kind of really used that as a guide.
Yeah.
I mean, we had 4 reports due with 72 communities. So it was a lot of reaching out and pulling stuff together. So we couldn't get into the details as much as, if a lone community or 2 communities were going after this. And that's one of the things with the supplemental planning. If you're a community, Manchester, somebody else, I want to take a deeper dive, you can go after supplemental to then kind of hone in on your location. And communities can work together. So if you have a common corridor, and I'm just gonna use like 125 in Plastow and Kingston, they could combine and go after a grant, just like the MPOs did. You can do that as well. So if you don't want to go in by yourself and you have a corridor that has connectivity, you can do that as well. So.
Any other questions, Frank?
You referenced it, I think, in your last answer, for clients, essentially 72 communities. I noticed that this plan since Southern New Hampshire Planning, you worked for 4. So what was the sort of the overall, sort of the piece we're talking about, and the approach was done for all of them, and then you worked with each MPO for that particular group of communities to issue the final report?
Yes.
So I'm assuming if I look at these reports, just based on the contract, that the standard stuff will be the same in the reports, and then the actual community data is what's going to drive the rest of it.
Pretty,
Okay,
yeah.
thank
There,
you.
there might be some, depending on the MPO, they might want to reword things differently,
Right after
reorganize.
submission.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so yeah, exactly.
thank
Yeah.
you.
Any questions from our virtual audience? Hearing none, thank you very much. Yep,
Yeah, one last thing, if you're thinking about it and you reach out to Nate or the MPO, if Nate, feel free to reach out to us. I mean, we want to make sure that the safety is working, people are safe. So if you have questions, we'll be more than happy. We've worked with the Federal Highway on some of this stuff, so we have some insights. Not that it'll be just a simple call, not charging or anything, just want to make sure you get in and be able to utilize this, so.
Yeah, and I guess, I'd also just like to acknowledge my colleagues at Rockingham Planning Commission. They were the leads on this effort on behalf of the 4 MPOs. They did all the administrative work, processed all the invoices, did all the progress reporting to Federal Highway Administration. They took one for the team in doing that, and we appreciate Tim Roach and Dave Walker, all our colleagues at Rockingham, for doing that for us.
Thanks. Thank you very much.
There's a message in the chat.
Okay.
Message in the chat. Let's see. I think it's just some sort of AI. Yeah. All right. So I'm gonna stop sharing here.
all right, is there any other business that needs to come before the MPO? Hearing, seeing none, looking for an adjournment. Motion. Second. All in favor? Aye. Call to order the meeting of the Southern New Hampshire Planning Commission of April 22nd, 2025. Look for motion for action on the minutes. And roll call. Peter, second. Linda. All right.
From Auburn, we have Chris Sterndale.
You're not.
For Bedford, Bill G.
Present and abstain.
Let's see, John Nelson.
Present, abstain.
And Mark Snyder.
Present, abstain.
From Canby, Von Lavender.
Present? Yes.
Chester. You still have Andrew Paddock online? Yep. Andrew Paddock, are you here and do you approve the minutes?
Present and I.
Okay, great. And in-house Deb Munson. Here and yes. Okay, great. Deerfield, Fred McGarry.
Here and yes.
And also Errol Rhodes.
Here and yes.
From Derry, we have John O'Connor online.
Here and yes.
Okay, and Richard Tripp is in-house.
Here and yes.
Francistown, Linda Kuhnhart. Here and yes. And Gary Schnackenberg.
Here and yes.
Do we still have Jennifer Vadney online?
Yep, here and abstain.
Great, thank you. Goffstown, Joanne Duffy.
Here and abstain.
And Barbara Griffin.
Here and yes.
Let's see, Jacob LaFontaine, are you still here? No, I don't see him. Okay. No here. All right. Londonderry, Brian Battaglia.
Here and yes.
Suzanne Brunel,
Here and abstain.
and Art Rook.
Here in the, yes, in the minutes.
And last but not least, Patrick Cheatham from Londonderry.
Here and abstain.
Be safe in that turn.
Dan O'Neill, do you agree on the minutes?
Here and yes.
Okay, great, thank you. Eliza Augusta. Here and yes. And Kevin Shepherd.
Here.
Great. New Boston, Alan Campbell. Here and yes. And from Wyndham, Peter Griffin.
Here and yes.
And Ed LaPointe.
Yeah, here and yes.
Great. Did I miss anybody? Okay, great. Thank you.
All right, on to new business. We have New Hampshire Housing Challenge Program. Informational only, I guess Sylvia, and we also have Andrew Dorset in the house from the House Financing Director for BEA. Sylvia, I assume you're gonna kick it off?
I just wanted to thank Andrew today for joining us. I had the pleasure of meeting Andrew at one of REDC's recent, I guess I'll call them workshops. And I was lucky enough to hear him speak about the HOP grant and the other work that the state is doing to try to really face the challenges of housing in the state. And so I invited Andrew to come speak with the commission. And so here he is today. I'm real pleased that he's here. And I don't know if he's away from his desk for a minute.
I'm here physically. I didn't know if it would be easier to do a presentation.
Okay. I thought you were going to come in person. So there you go. Well, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you. The presentation isn't in your computer, right? I have to link it there.
Aware that it's.
Okay.
Sylvia, do you know it's a presentation in the computer? Our computer?
I don't think we received it.
Okay. Is there a way I can share from here? Like through the Skype?
Might be faster, make you a presenter.
Yeah, that's
Right. Yeah.
Pam, could you make Andrew a presenter?
You see, you can click on the share.
Yes.
Who's gonna make us presenter?
You got one, James?
The one from the printer work right now?
Sure.
One says share.
Oh, right there. Okay, sorry.
Yeah,
There
it's
we go.
going to make Andrew a presenter.
There you go. Thank you. Used to use the Teams.
Here. Sorry.
I for some reason I can't make Andrew presenter from my James.
This work.
Yeah.
Click on the share.
Do the share again.
Even in case there's any cohort.
Here we go.
Zach, is there any? Can you try to do it on the computer in there? Oh, never mind.
Okay, here we are.
Wonderful.
And
You have this seat.
all right.
Thanks a lot.
All right, so I'll introduce myself briefly. Sylvia already did. My name's Andrew Dorset. I work at the Business and Economic Affairs Department for the state, and my focus is almost entirely on housing. So first, I'll just kind of go over a little bit of what the issue is, what we've done, and then talk a little bit about where we're headed. So I think that you guys are well aware of the housing needs assessment that was done a couple of years ago. And in that, we discovered at that time, we were just under 24,000 units in New Hampshire. There was a 24,000 unit deficit of demand versus supply. And that included 12,764 owner units and 10,900 rental units. We were able to do an analysis and break that down by regional planning commission. And so you can see the Southern New Hampshire region by 2040 was looking at almost 20,000 units just in this area. with a total in the state by this year, which where we're at now, of 32,704 units. By 2030, 60,000. By 2035, about 78,000. In 2040, 88,000 units. One thing that we found is that New Hampshire has pretty much always had a death birth ratio that's off, so our population has been declining. The net in-migration has become so strong. A lot of people, I think, before the pandemic even, is that?
Not now.
Oh, okay, there we go. Found New Hampshire to be an attractive place, and I'd like to toot BEA's horn too. I think they've done a great job at attracting new businesses to the state, as well as getting visitors to start contemplating making this place their home. And I think that the combination of that has resulted now, even with the birth and death rate ratio that's off, we still had a population growth of 2%. So that's due to the net in-migration. So that number that I was showing before for units did not include short-term rentals and seasonal use. So if you add that in, then we're up to 102,000 units to 111,000 units by 2040. So this is, and now this is a little bit about what we did. So in 2023, the governor launched the Invest New Hampshire program. It was a rapid deployment and use of the $100 million ARPA revenue loss money that came into the state. They wanted to try to have a rapid impact. They brought me on, and I think it was maybe July, and I had to have everything launched and awarded by November. So it was a really trial by fire, a lot of 2 a.m. nights, but I think it's been proven pretty successful. Here's a breakdown. We have let me see here. We had the program basically broken down into 4 programs. The capital grant program was $64 million, with $50 million being put directly into development that had developed a gap in their financing stack. And right when we needed it most, inflation came in and shortages of labor, and everything drove up the cost of development. So what we did was a targeted approach on projects that needed some assistance to be able to get completed. We did another 14 million into New Hampshire housing. With New Hampshire Housing, we gave the money to them to subsidize some of the programs that they have. They have the low-income housing tax credit program, the bond program, and other programs to help create multifamily housing. We put 16.2 million directly into municipal governments. That was used as an incentive payment to municipalities, almost as an entitlement. If a municipality permitted affordable housing within a time period, they were entitled to $10,000 per unit that they could use for almost whatever they wanted. And we saw some pretty creative uses of it. Manchester, for example, was able to spend that into additional housing by putting it into a housing revolving loan fund. Other communities, I heard of a community put a new roof on a school with the funds. I've heard of other communities, helping pay for, unexpected infrastructure improvements that were needed for a multifamily project like fire extinguishers or water line extensions. And some just put it in their unreserved fund balance to help stabilize their tax rate. The other program we had was demolition grants. The demolition grants initially was to just completely take out a structure in order to either put in new housing, clean up property that was in a dilapidated, state to help area, or create green spaces that were going to support housing or parking or anything like that. What we found was that by tweaking the program and enabling, instead of full demolition, doing the internal demolition, significant internal demolition that would help a building to be significantly reused or refurbished, we were able to have a greater impact. The picture right there is of a project in Franklin, and we've had quite a few in this area too that we were able to create housing with. And the next one was the housing opportunity program, and that really enabled communities to do some technical assistance, some ordinance changes, and start a community dialogue about housing and what the communities want specifically for their own community. To have the dialogue before developers come in and start to decide how they want to shape their community with housing. ahead of time, and then also provided for hiring of technical assistance called housing navigators. Some communities and regions hired a housing navigator to help them with that process. So overall, it was $100 million. We expected to potentially impact maybe 1,500 to 2,000 units, but as of right now, we're at 4,657 units, and 2,780 of those units are considered affordable, and the average affordability period is about 30 years. So this is this map will show you the program is really geographically diverse, and you can see some blank areas. For the most part, that's not communities that didn't participate. There's mountains in those areas or water. So we definitely see the need. We saw the need and demand all over the state of New Hampshire. I'm just going to go over a couple of examples of interesting projects that took place. This one was a half-acre lot in Nashua, and it sat vacant for a long time. The developer bought it and really couldn't make anything pencil out on it. He was reading the newspaper, so I'm told. He saw our program. He figured out what little piece of, soft money he might need to make the project work, and we looked at it and it seemed very attractive. And so on this half acre, he created 24 units, all of them affordable. And what's unique about it too is that he didn't just make them as cheaply as possible. He wanted the residents to feel more like they're not living in some kind of not that any of the projects do, but they wanted to feel like they're living in a significantly space designed for them. So you can see like the attributes of if they're really nice places, and these are right in downtown Nashua, walkable to bus transportation downtown, all that. So this project also was part of a greater community and economic development project. Franklin, has anyone ever visited Franklin? They've been under a long-term plan to redevelop and revitalize their community for some time. They started with a whitewater project, and this was really, I think, one of the more significant pieces, and maybe one of the final pieces that would just put them over the top. So this was a dilapidated mill. It was a pretty unsafe place with heavy environmental issues, and Chembert Properties bought the complex and turned it into a mixed affordable and market rate development. And just to show you what it looks like inside, when we partner in a project, we don't allow the market rate to be any different than the affordable. So you can see these are pretty high end, and the affordable units are too. So this was initially just going to be a straight market rate project. By us coming in with a little bit participating, the developer agreed to meet our threshold of 20% of the units had to be affordable. So and the great thing about participating in projects like this is that it's really helping the community of Franklin revitalize. There's a new brewery and a restaurant. There's a salon in here. There's state offices. There's just a really strong mix of uses. This is another really neat story. One of the things that I really enjoyed participating with was first-time developers. There's some programs, New Hampshire Housing Finance Authority, for example, has well-established programs for affordable housing. They're a bit more they're a bit more difficult as far as following all the steps, following the protocol, and you have to have a professional involved in it. And it does create a barrier for developers who aren't necessarily doing 42 units or 84 units. So we were more light and fast. This one is an example of an emergency room doctor, and he was hearing from his nursing staff. He was hearing from one of his kids' teachers, his mechanic, the same thing, that they were having trouble finding housing. They were either living with a friend or still living with their family or commuting. And so he told me that he talked to his wife and they felt convicted that they should do something for their community. So here's a half acre, back behind his house. And they decided they were going to put 12 units in. They've never done it before. They maxed out all their credit cards. They spent their entire life savings. And then our program came up and we were able to save the project and keep it moving. So he took underutilized space near downtown Littleton. He hired child labor. These are his kids. He was able to get them to work by agreeing to give them the profits off of the coin laundry. So, but again, you know, it was really exciting because it's just a guy and his wife in the community deciding to step up and become developers to try to solve a need. And he told me for these 12 units, he had 120 qualified applicants. So the demand, even up in Littleton, it's just prevalent everywhere. So what's next? We have really two programs that are in effect right now. We have Invest NH 2.0. We didn't get too crazy with the name. And it's basically the same as the last program, just the capital. So, you know, not the MP, not the payment per unit, not the demolition. This is just capital for development. You can developer, profit, not-for-profit, municipal. They can use the money for almost any aspect of the development, be land acquisition or other uses, or demolition. But we only have 10 million this time instead of 64 headed to that. So it's going to be, I anticipate, highly competitive. And we expect this to open probably next month. The funding requirements are 20% of housing units need to be developed. They have to be affordable. They have to be deed restricted for a minimum of 10 years. They need to meet the income requirements for 80% AMI that are established by HUD. And as I said, you could use them for redevelopment, site acquisition, code required improvements such as fire suppression systems, costs related to development of affordable housing focused overlay districts, regional revolving loan funds, and hard costs associated with the housing project. The next program we have is the Housing Champions Program. The Housing Champions Program has two components. One is your community has to become designated. To be designated, you have to score over a certain number of points in our application process. And what that does is it shows that your community has adopted ordinances that are housing friendly, and that your boards are trained. And there's a series of criteria. We're in BEA Rules 500 to take a look at that. Our first round of designations closed earlier this year. We have 18 communities that are designated as housing champions currently. If you're a designated housing champion, then you get access to additional grant funds. These funds are available only to municipalities. So they can be used for infrastructure improvements. They can be used as grant match. For example, you know, the TAP program presentation was earlier. There's a 20% match on TAP. These funds could potentially be used to cover a community's 20% match on that. So it could be sewer line extensions, you know, to support housing or park development, or you know, roadway improvements, that sort of thing. We have we received, I think, probably about $11 million worth of ask of these 18 communities, and we just sent out award notices and expect to award the $5 million in the GNC at the Governor and Council meeting in June or July. And we have another round of housing champion designation. I think it's opening up probably by next week. So, and that's what I have. Questions?
Thank you, Andrew. Any questions for Andrew?
Question. When you're calling something affordable, does that like are there qualifications to be able to actually apply for the apartment, or is it Section 8 housing, or like?
Well, it could be a combination. But like our program doesn't require that they're doing a wage analysis to figure out if the tenant is actually within the range, but the units themselves have to be restricted at an amount that is considered affordable. And the formula is basically you take 80% of the average median income, and then you take 30% of that, and they can't be above that number. The rent can't be above that number for that household, for that apartment size. So, you know, studio 1, 2, or 3, or based on certain values.
So
the new round of capital, requires at least 20%. If you have 100% of affordable, is that included your scoring in the process? Yes. Okay. Yep.
That affordable formula you just went through, the 80%, in a lot of places, it's kind of a high, still a high number. To be truly affordable, it should be lower than that, shouldn't it?
Yeah, there's different levels. So there's workforce housing, and I think statutorily that's at 50% AMI. The Invest in New Hampshire 1.0 really wasn't, this was meant to hit the missing middle affordability. So it's for, it's not necessarily for the Section 8, although we did pair it with projects that were Section 8.
So it's not for low income, it's for middle income.
Right, for workforce. So it would be professional workforce. And really, yeah, yes, exactly. And really what we found was there is a significant demand for low income housing, but there's also missing middle. And there's also every aspect of it. So the idea was we need to have all types of housing. And there's a concept called filtering. And how does it functionally work? The way that it theoretically works is, let's say you created a Class A high-end apartments, and you created a plethora of them. Well, what happened is there's people living in, say, Class B right now who had wanted to go in Class A, but there was nothing available. So they all now take advantage of that. Now B opens up, and there's people in C who wanted to go up, and so there's a kind of a flow up. But in a market where we are so off between supply and demand, I'm not sure how well that even functions. It's just, there's just a lot of demand and not enough being produced.
So back to the gap, you give a numeric assessment of the gap. What's the percentage assessment? What does that number mean percentage wise?
So like the
2% gap, is a 20% gap?
like in a project, you mean? Like if you go find it?
The
Oh, okay, yeah.
overall gap.
Yeah. So from the housing needs assessment. So I would say, for example, over the past 3 years, like we've been able to touch 4,600 units. New Hampshire Housing Finance Authority, for example, has been able to do some amount of that. I would say maybe they were in the 1,500 range. Then there's also just market rate or high-end units being produced. So I would say, it's hard to tell, but we're probably at least maybe 60% below where the demand is in production.
Really?
Yeah, that's why the numbers, if you look, continue to compound over the years. So, and there's, one of the neat things about, I'm privileged to be able to sit here and to be able to participate and meet all these developers and see different things that are happening. There's really neat technologies that are being deployed right now. And I think that over time, those are going to have a significant impact. So for example, there's modular, there's a heavy use on it by one developer in particular. They can come in 7 days after the concrete is cured and have a weather tight shell on 42 or 84 units after 7 days. And the units already have all the fixtures, the plumbing, the electrical. And instead of having a whole being dependent on a team of professionals that just aren't available, you can have one person, one plumber walk through and connect all of the various connections from the stacked modular. And I've also seen some interesting activity. There's another group who's they have a steel roll basically in the back of a tractor trailer, and it's a machine on the other end, and it makes the parts at the speed of the workers. So you at the end of the day, you just close up shop. The next day you open up and start again. And it looks like that's pretty quick too. So I don't know. USA Steel, I guess. I don't know.
How many units would you say would the maximum in a middle housing building?
How many are needed?
How many units would you say would be in a middle housing building? Because it's not like a 48 unit apartment house. It's and it's not a single family house, it's a multi-family, I believe, but.
Yeah, all of our projects were multifamily.
Are you asking about the missing middle?
The missing middle.
Yeah.
The missing middle.
Like, yeah, I mean, I'd say it's a pretty significant piece of it. I couldn't tell you the percentage. I would say if you look at, I think you guys have on your website, the housing needs assessment. And I believe that may speak to that.
Yeah, because, you know, the reason there's a missing middle is because you have single family and then you have, you know, 48 unit apartment house. So there has to be something to fill that gap. And I was just wondering.
Oh, yeah. I mean, what we've seen, so with our program, we tried not to just focus on really large. It made it more challenging to have smaller projects, but our smallest project was 4 units in Franconia. And the largest is 500 in Nashua. But you know, I think that one of the things I would like to see in the Invest in H 2.0 is really a focus on you know, smaller projects, maybe 24 units or below. We see, you know, for example, the repurposing of downtown buildings. There's still, you know, quite a bit of underutilized second, third floors. And it seems like those really have a good total development cost for what you get. Good impact on the downtown side.
Will this be on the website? Southern New Hampshire planning?
Yeah, we can.
Yeah, send it to Sylvia or Robert, they can both of us, and,
Okay, great, yeah. Barbara?
Does VEA have any data on how many units are approved right now and under construction that occupancy permits have not been issued for or construction hasn't begun?
A great question. I believe yes. I think I just saw something this morning on that. I could send that over to Sylvia as well.
Yeah, I'd be interested in knowing what the number, because I know a couple of communities that there are hundreds of units that have been approved, but either haven't started construction.
Barbara, the Office of Planning and Development tracks building permits annually throughout the state, so we do have data, but it's only up to 2020.
Those are building permits.
And those are building permits, not certain.
Not approvals.
Not, so.
So there's a lot more units approved than they've got.
Right, that's, when I look at these numbers and the increase, I'm sort of, I look at them and I'm like, does that include everything that is in the pipeline, or is that a gross assessment based on an analysis at a certain point in time?
Yeah.
And my guess is it's based off a snapshot, extrapolating expected curves of deaths and in and out, and just sort of curious.
Yeah, you're right. It is a snapshot. This was taken from the housing needs assessment data, which was, I think, all of 2023.
Well, I'm Peter. New Hampshire Housing Finance Authority is a great resource. You know, their LIHTC credits are 80, 60, 40%. And then they have Section 8 opportunities as well. So that's what they deem affordable and workforce is 80, 60, 80, 60, 40%. So the low income tax credits are available for construction.
Yeah, they're great. And they have right now, there's a piece of legislation that potentially would take instead of the first 5 million, the first 10 million off of the land use change tax and improvement. Yeah, and then put that into the New Hampshire Housing Fund.
In Manchester, Lincoln Avenue Capital is building, and it's truly affordable. This is the former police station downtown that's now coming out of the ground and being demolished. And then right across Merrimack Street, that project, in fact, I think your opening photograph might have been of that.
It could be.
They use, yeah, that one there, that's coming right along. It's terrific. I think there's, I want to say 176 units in that. Those folks use a combination of tax credits that they kind of make available to other investors and grants, and they focus on truly affordable, 30%, I think. Great organization. They can have capital.
Scott Shaw.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're in 2 of the 3 projects with them on that.
Good.
Yeah, he's doing great work. Just wish it was faster. But it is.
Any questions from our virtual audience? Andrew? Not, we'll wrap it up. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity.
That's it. Any other business come before the commission? Okay. James?
Yes, hi, Southern New Hampshire Planning Commission is currently in the process of updating the comprehensive plan. And part of that is reviewing the issues and goals that the region wants to achieve over the next several decades, that's 2050. And at this time next week, we will be having a focus group discussion about those issues and goals. And many of you have signed up to participate, and I wanted to say thank you to those who have signed up. And also offer that if anyone hasn't seen that email or is interested and hasn't signed up yet, then I'm here as you filter out the office. Happy to take your name and I'll add you to the list if you have an interest in participating. That's it.
What date?
It's Tuesday next week, so the 28th.
And that's virtual, right?
It's virtual, yeah, it's all online via Zoom, because we're gonna break out into separate groups to talk about specific projects, so the top. There's 8 topic areas to talk about, we can't all cover all that content at once, so what we're gonna do is divide and conquer, we'll break into groups of about 5 to 7, and we'll talk in about 1 or 2 topics each.
Any other business?
Just real quick we just invited the executive committee to the commissioners convening. This happens every 2-3 years, as you know. It's all the regional planning commissions getting together, hosting an event. So stay tuned for more information on that. I'm sure Linda will send that out shortly. There you go. Linda has some information. So take a look at that. It's no cost to anyone. We have about 7 slots open, and first come, first serve. And yeah, it should be a really great event. Lunch is included, and we've invited Eric Zimmerman. If many of you may recall, Eric is the executive director of the National Association of Regional Commissions, and there's also going to be a legislative panel that who is putting that together? Stratford Regional Planning Commission is putting that together. So it should be pretty exciting.
Thanks, Sylvia. Any other public comment or?
Yeah, it's some of you may have heard, I'm gonna be retiring at the end of June. And so therefore, we're gonna be looking for a new office manager. So if anyone knows of anybody super wonderful, terrific, let us know, and we'll have a
And we're bound to have a big party, so stay tuned for that announcement.
All right, well, Sylvia, thank you for joining us remotely today from the sunny islands, and hopefully you have a great vacation.
Thank you.
Motion to adjourn. All in favor?
Hi.
All right.
You're not ready to go.
Take care.